guys, so today we are going to be discussing a pretty large topic and answering a lot of your questions regarding starting Airsoft, or if you already play Airsoft, taking it to the next level, be it weekend events, Milsim games, roleplay games. So hopefully today this video will help all of you guys out there. But before we jump into the content, I quickly want to remind you guys the competition for the PTS Prizes is closing soon. So if you do want to get your hands on some PTS goodies, leave a like and a comment on this video. If you are new to the sport and you're watching this video, some of those goodies may well help you guys out. So what makes my channel interesting for Airsoft is I actually posted a gameplay from my second ever game of Airsoft. So if you have been subscribed to the channel now for 2 or 3 years, you've actually seen my evolution and learning curve throughout the sport. You can see my playstyle improve, you can see my kit and equipment improve. So a lot of you guys out there have already based a lot of your kit off some of my reviews, and some of the things I've said are good and bad. So I do appreciate already that some of you guys have kind of been on this learning curve with me and taken some of the advice and some of the lessons I've learned while playing the sport. Now, of course, there are players out there who have played far longer than myself, but I feel in my time I've had chance to play a lot of different sites all over the UK. I've played sites abroad, I've been to 1-day events, 2-day events, weekend events, Milsim, roleplay, night games, I've even been to events in the US. And of course, along that journey, I've had chance to use a lot of different guns. Rifles, pistols, sniper rifles, LMGs, gas blowback guns, HPA, AEGs. So again, hopefully I can pass along some of my knowledge and experience to you guys, and you won't have to make the same mistakes and challenges I've come across, whether you're new to the sport or you've been playing for quite some time. Because that is one of the great things about Airsoft. Not only is the equipment getting better and better, meaning you can improve your weapons and the kit you run, you can also constantly improve the way you play, whether you've been playing for a few months or a few years. So to begin with, one of the most commonly asked questions by new players and players looking for weekend and Milsim events is, where can I find my local site or nearest site, and where can I find these weekend events? Well, in the description below, I have actually linked a website in the UK, and I think I have a good one for the US that actually has a map, and it shows pretty much near enough all the operating sites at the current moment, be it urban sites, woodland sites, and if you click on them, it actually gives you their link to their Facebook. So simply click on that link, find where you live, and try and find your nearest site, be it woodland or urban areas. Now from there, I would say most sites these days do tend to operate via their Facebook page. A lot of them do have their own websites, but if you want a quicker and immediate response, Facebook is probably the place to look. A lot of these sites do operate making their events each week through Facebook, but this is where things can start to vary. Some sites you simply click attending and that can be it. Some sites you have to actually pay a little bit of a advance payment on their website, and some of them you don't even do anything, you just simply turn up. So if you want to find out more, as I said, find your local site on these websites, and then I would recommend talking to these guys on Facebook if you can. Send them a message, discuss with those guys how you can set up coming to a game, especially if you are new and you have to hire equipment. Again, some of these websites do actually tell you if they are hiring equipment. Not all sites do have rental gear, so again, you want to be checking if you are totally new to the sport, which sites allow you to use rental gear. And if you are using rental gear, you do usually have to book in advance to make sure you've got yourself a gun and a weapon locked down. Now again, this is where things can start to vary with age. Some sites you can only attend if you're under the age of 16 with an adult. Some sites will just not allow players under the age of 13. And a lot of sites, if you're under the age of 18, will force you to wear full face protection. But again, all of this can vary from site to site, so make sure you check all of this out with the site you attend on visiting before you go. Now, for the more experienced players who've been asking a similar question regarding Milsim and weekend events, of course, if you are in the US, I recommend following the American Milsim and Milsim West Facebook page. Again, Facebook is normally where these guys seem to operate if you want to keep up to date. All of them do have websites normally linked through their Facebook page, but all these guys will be linked in the description. If you're in the UK at the moment, things are a little bit more tricky. Milsim is going through a rough patch because there's a lot of issues with using MOD sites. But I would recommend looking at the Sterling Airsoft page. These guys put on the most frequent events, usually nearly at the moment about one a month. We are visiting the Kerwin events actually this month with those guys. Now, not all the Sterling events are strictly Milsim events. My Operation Blackhand series you saw recently was more of a force-on-force competitive points-based weekend game. And the one we're going to in August is more of a more strictly Milsim realistic style game. So they do a different variant of style games, but all of them do usually take place over a 24 to 36 hour period. But the main thing with going to a Milsim or a weekend event that differs from a normal skirmish is getting there in advance, or at least booking in advance. Of course, a skirmish game you can normally just book the night before and turn up. With a big Milsim event, not only do you have to prep yourself personally in advance, But for example, the event we're going to next weekend, we bought the tickets for, or at least booked and prepaid for the tickets about a month in advance. So with Sterling, the tickets do come on sale about 6 weeks before the event takes place. So that is the main difference. If you are looking to attend a weekend or Milsim event, you have to prep far down the line. Now luckily, Sterling actually at the start of the year put a full calendar out, so you can look at events that are going to be taking place in 12 months time. You can't buy the tickets yet, but you can start to look at them and try and free up time and your dates to make sure you have space to go to those events. So that is the main difference, is just preparation in time. Now, of course, the price is a lot more for a weekend event. With Sterling, you're looking at about £90 for a full 2 or 3 day event. You pay $45 as a deposit, and you pay the rest when you turn up. Now, as well as those guys, I would also recommend looking at Legion Airsoft. They were the guys we did a recent event with down in the south of England. Unfortunately, I couldn't record because it was a SAS training facility, which was very, very cool. But I would suggest looking at those guys. I will leave them linked in the description below. And I'll also leave a link to Warzone. Now, you have seen my Operation Crypt Kicker and Operation Sledgehammer, both of which took place at the Fibua Sennybridge site, run by the guys at Warzone. Now, these events are more of a battle sim. It's a mixture of a skirmish force-on-force event with a little bit of the realism you'd expect from a Milsim. So, while we're still discussing Milsim, maybe there's a few players out there who've played for a few years, you've got all the equipment you need to go into battle, you've got all the stuff you need for a standard skirmish, but what extra equipment do you need if you're attending a Milsim? Well, if you're already geared to the nines with skirmish weaponry and equipment, that should be enough for the battle itself. But the extra stuff you need is normally comfort stuff. You need a good sleeping bag, maybe a Four Seasons one depending on where you're playing and the country you're in. If you're in the UK and you're going up into the Welsh Brecons, I promise you, you could need a Four Seasons sleeping bag. You need very, very good wet gear, good boots, not just boots that look cool for maybe a skirmish. I'm talking rugged boots, because if your ankle goes 5 hours into a 48-hour event, you're not going to be very comfortable. You want waterproof boots again. Good socks, change of clothes, you want ways to heat up your food, you need a lot of water for washing, of course drinking, maybe cooking food. So most of the extras you need for a Milsim event are actually about keeping you in the game and keeping you pretty much alive. The amount of players I've seen that turn up to an event, they don't have the right weather gear, they don't have enough food, they don't have the right sleeping gear, and after the first day they pack up and go home because they're wet, they're miserable, and they're just completely ill-equipped. So going to a Milsim event compared to a standard skirmish is all about having the right kit to keep you in that fight for more than just 8 hours, but up to 3 or 4 days. Now, if you would like to know more in detail information about my Milsim kit, I will leave links to previous videos on my website where I go through all the equipment you see me run at a Milsim game. So again, check those out in the description below. Now, of course, if you're a new player and you have no equipment at all and you're about to go to your first Airsoft game, the most important piece of equipment you can have is, of course, the gun. No, of course not. It is your eye pro. You only get one set of eyes, and if you cheap out on your eye pro and you lose an eye, well, you can't get those things fixed very easily. So I would 100% recommend you spend a lot of time looking at eye protection that is right for you and making sure it is very good eye protection. I will leave links to the eye protection I use. I have full seal Bolly X800 goggles, and if you want more open goggles or glasses like I currently use, the Revision Sawflies, I will leave them in the description below. Making sure you have the right equipment to keep your eyes safe and the rest of your face, if you wish, is of course key. Now, with regards to the rest of your protective gear, if you do wish to wear some kind of face protection to protect your mouth, your teeth, I would recommend getting a mesh mask. I personally don't wear them for larger events, but if I am playing CQB recently, I have learnt the hard way. Wearing one of those masks is very, very important. Sometimes I do wear just a gum shield, but it won't stop you getting bad welts all over the rest of your face that can bleed pretty painfully. Now, as well as that, helmets, they're not just for appearance to try and look cool. The amount of times I've smashed my head into large branches that are hanging low, I've banged my head into low doorways, or there's just things flying around, or of course if you fall over. So having a quite good quality bump helmet can also protect your head from some bad knocks. Now again, it is worth bearing in mind, if you are going to be planning on renting kit, you can speak to those sites and ask if they have the masks for you. To my understanding, all sites should be able to give you masks. You can't be expected to turn up as a rental player and not have some face protection. Usually it's a paintball style mask, a Dye I4 or something that will give you full face protection, including your mouth and teeth. So if you are planning on renting, you should be completely covered. So now let's talk about the thing you guys are all excited about, and that is of course guns, the most exciting and interesting part of Airsoft. Now this is where my own opinion does start to come in a little bit. There are different ways of approaching Airsoft, especially in the UK if you are a new player. One of which, of course, if you're a new player, you've got to have that two-tone gun. So if you want to buy your own gun and you haven't got a defense yet, bear in mind UCARA isn't a license, it's a defense. I'll quickly address this. People think you need a UCARA license to be able to play Airsoft. I don't have one as a defense, I never have, because my YouTube channel and my site membership are a good enough defense to prove I play Airsoft. A defense is something that pretty legitimately proves you play Airsoft, and by being an Airsoft player, you are therefore allowed to have a RIF or a realistic imitation firearm. So a lot of sites will give you a site membership if you play for a while. I know SWAT does, I have a SWAT membership. And a lot of websites around the UK do recognise those memberships and therefore allow you to buy a realistic imitation firearm. Now, of course, if you are new to the sport, one thing I would suggest is just renting equipment first. You don't want to spend a lot of money on guns to find out that Airsoft might not quite be for you. But if you're also renting equipment until you can get yourself a site membership, that means you don't have to buy yourself a two-tone gun. Because one of the issues with two-tone guns is they have a very low resale value. Not a lot of players out there are wanting to buy a bright purple, green or blue gun. So I would suggest just renting, maybe using the site's equipment until you get that membership, and then you can buy your own gun that can be in real colours. And this is where you can start to choose what type of gun you want. You can buy twice, or you can buy nice. Now that is a figure of speech that is quite appropriate for Airsoft guns. Some players might buy what they call a beginner gun that may be costing £120, but then after 6 months they're finding they want something bigger and better, and they spend another £200, and then again in 6 months £200 more. And before you know it, you've spent £600–700. But if you just buy a really nice gun in the first place, you can save yourself a lot of money down the line. I did this. The first gun I bought as soon as I got my site membership was my WE-888. Now that gun was flawless for me personally, and I ran it for 2 or 3 years without any problem, and still to this day it runs perfectly. And that's because I bought a pretty high-end gun. It cost about £350 right off the get-go. So in the long run, I did actually save myself money. Now, of course, I understand if you're new to the sport, investing £400 or £500 in a gun is a pretty big ask. But if you know you're going to be playing Airsoft for some time and you're definitely going to be dedicated to it, not buying a starter gun, which is definitely a false economy, can save you money in the long term. So, if you do want something like a Tokyo Marui gun, why not go for it straight away rather than buying into this weird economy of you have to have a beginner gun if you're a beginner player. Now, of course, this is all varying on budget. I know a lot of people can't afford some of those higher end guns, but if you can, it is something really worth seriously thinking about if you want to save some money. That said, if you are looking for a mid-range, kind of mid-tier gun, as I've said a lot of times before, I always recommend the Ares series. Take a look at the Octo Arms Ares guns. They are an M4 platform. A lot of people do roll their eyes saying, oh, another M4 platform. But just like in real life with a real firearm, it's a very versatile platform. You can use a lot of different stocks, different magazines, different sights. There's a lot of other accessories out there externally and internally in the airsoft world to improve those guns. So M4s are a very good starting platform. If you go for something a little more exotic, whilst it may look cool, you may struggle improving it or getting parts for it further down the line. So at this stage, you've found your local site, you've booked yourself onto an event, maybe you're renting equipment, or maybe you've gone out there and bought yourself some eye protection, some face pro, maybe even a gun. So finally, it's now down to what you want to look like. Now, the reason I put this at the end of the video and last is because it is the least important. Playing in full SAS getup or just wearing jumper and jeans isn't really that important. A lot of players do wear the equipment you see myself wearing because not only do we think it looks pretty cool, but it also kind of blends into that realism, especially if you are going to Milsim events, that kind of simulation immersion. But at the end of the day, it is your own personal choice. Now, I have done a lot of videos in the past about different loadouts, different equipment I use. Again, I have a full page on my website where I go through all the gear I use, so I will leave all the links to that in the description below. But whether you want to go with just jeans or in a full military getup, of course, that decision is down to you. One thing I will say, plate carriers are actually very, very useful because if you've got a gun and know where to put all those magazines, unless you just stuff them in your jeans, it's not going to be very useful. So having some kind of plate carrier or chest rig to allow you to reach your magazines and grenades and equipment very easily is going to help you out. Extras, I would say, are things like a battle belt with a dump pouch, which makes reloading much quicker. Of course, you can attach a pistol to there if you decide to run one. So how far you decide to go with your getup and equipment is down to you. And I find a lot of players do go down the route I went down. You start off with maybe some equipment you've bought off eBay quite cheap, but then as you form teams and make friends, you want to have some team cohesion, and your equipment starts to get better and improve. And some of those prices you originally thought, my god, that's very expensive, suddenly start to become quite cheap in your mind as you suddenly become a lot more invested in the sport. and eventually, before you know it, you're buying yourself night vision. But we won't cover that today. So, if you do have any further questions about equipment, as I said, I have lots of links to different loadouts I've ran throughout my Airsoft playtime, all in the description below. And as you saw from the intro montage from this video, you can see throughout my playtime how my kit has slowly improved and got, no doubt, a little bit more expensive. So I hope this has answered a lot of your questions. I know I've tried to cram quite a lot into a 15-16 minute video. There's a lot to cover, but I will, on this particular video, trying to be answering as many of your questions as I possibly can. So if there is something you feel I haven't covered, tell me in the description below. If this video has helped you out, leave a like. Of course, it does mean a lot to me. But in the meantime, guys, thank you for watching, and I'll see you soon.